Okay, so you know how we asked you to send in stuff that felt like it was missing a manual, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you sent us How to Human Part 1, Self-Reflection and Self-Awareness. And
I love that title.
yeah, it's pretty great, isn't it?
It is.
Because it kind of gets at what we're always, I think, looking for. Like,
Yeah.
how do you actually
Yeah.
live this life right?
Right.
And this material actually focuses on some pretty fundamental skills and
Yeah.
ways of looking at the world and ways of thinking about yourself and your place in the world
Yeah.
that really can help you, adapt to things a bit easier, find more of a sense of balance, and
Yeah.
I think most importantly, understand yourself better.
Yeah. It really is like, we talk about this idea of like a human operating manual.
Right.
And we are in this constant state of assembling this super complex
Right.
piece of furniture, and we don't have the instructions.
Right.
And so this really is like getting at
Yeah.
the core set of instructions to like be able to figure that out
Yeah.
as we go.
Yeah, it tackles that whole idea of like,
Yeah.
humans really seem to want things to be stable and predictable.
Yes.
And yet
Yeah.
we're constantly facing change.
It changes. Yeah.
We long for connection,
We do.
but we also really crave our independence and our own space. And then we want this sense of certainty.
Right.
We want to know that things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
But the fundamental nature of life
Is that a certain?
is that it's uncertain.
Yeah.
So, we've set out on this mission today in this deep dive to really
Yes.
get under the skin of these ideas
Yeah.
of self-reflection and self-awareness
Yes.
as they're presented in the material that you sent.
Absolutely.
And to understand, why these aren't just some trendy buzzwords,
Yeah.
but they're really practical tools that can help anyone
Yes.
who is looking to live a more deliberate and meaningful life.
And, when I think about this idea of self-reflection, it's kind of like our personal root cause analysis for life.
Mm. Ooh, I like that.
Like in engineering, if something breaks down, the first thing you do is you have to understand why.
Yes.
What is the root cause of that failure?
Right.
Otherwise, you're just going to keep putting on Band-Aids.
Right.
And it's the same thing, I think, with how we operate as people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If we can understand why we react a certain way, or why
Yes.
we've had a certain outcome, or
Right.
why we feel a certain way, we can actually start to
Yeah.
fix it at the root so it doesn't keep happening.
And I think, just in terms of how the material defines self-reflection,
Yeah.
it's really about looking at your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions with curiosity,
Yes.
Right.
Not judgment.
not judgment.
This is key.
Right. So it's really about understanding what are my motivations,
Mhm.
what are some of the patterns that I'm noticing in my own behavior,
Yeah.
and is my life actually in alignment with what I value most?
Totally. And I think it's so important that you highlighted that word curiosity.
Yeah.
Because if we come at it from this judgment place, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or I should be
Yeah.
better at this,
Right.
it immediately shuts down that opportunity to actually learn.
Right. It shuts us down.
Yeah.
It puts us in a very defensive posture.
Totally.
Right. And so this idea of like, approaching it with curiosity is like, how can I learn from this?
Yeah.
So I'm not, constantly beating myself up over my past mistakes, but I'm actually like,
Yeah.
how can I evolve from this?
Totally.
So, in terms of everyday life, what would self-reflection,
Yeah.
what would that look like?
So let's imagine a scenario where you're finding yourself like consistently getting irritated by something that your partner says.
Oh, yeah.
It's like every time they make this one type of comment, you just like
Yeah.
gets under your skin.
Ugh.
And so self-reflection would be like, okay,
Yeah.
let me pause for a second and ask myself, why
Yeah.
is this particular comment like hitting a nerve for me?
Right.
Is it connected to something from my past?
Right.
Is it tapping into like an insecurity that I have?
Right.
Or, maybe it's Sunday night
Uh-oh.
and you're feeling that dread about the week ahead,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like every Sunday night you just get this feeling
Yep.
that like, ugh,
Yeah.
I don't want to do this again.
I don't want to go back to work.
And so self-reflection could be, okay, am I actually energized by the work that I'm doing?
Yeah.
Or am I feeling consistently drained by it?
Right.
And if I'm feeling drained by it, like what needs aren't being met?
Right. What is it about this that's not
Yeah.
working for me?
Totally. And it could even be as simple as like noticing you always shy away from challenges.
Oh, interesting.
And you're like,
Yeah.
wait a second, what is the fear that's actually holding me back here?
Wow. Yeah, it's really that internal process of
Yeah.
stepping back and looking at your life,
Absolutely.
almost like from a third-person perspective,
Yeah.
so that you can become more of an observer.
Totally. It's about going from autopilot to consciously piloting your own life.
Yeah, it's taking the wheel,
Yes,
right,
exactly.
of your own life rather than just being along for the ride.
And then we go to self-awareness,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, so let's talk about self-awareness.
So the material describes self-awareness as the ability to really, understand your own thoughts, your emotions and behaviors, but then also to see how they impact other people.
Okay, so it's taking it a step further
Yeah.
and seeing how it's not just about me,
Exactly.
but it's about the effect I'm having
On the world.
on the world around me.
Yeah.
So if self-reflection is that active,
Yeah.
kind of, digging in and asking those why questions,
Yes.
is self-awareness the state of actually having that
I think that's a beautiful way to put it.
deeper understanding?
Yes.
It's almost like
Yeah.
self-reflection is like the engine and
Yeah.
self-awareness is
Destination.
the destination. It's like what you gain
Equivalence.
from all of that digging and all of that,
And what it brings you is this clearer, more honest understanding of here are my values.
Okay.
Here are my strengths.
Yeah.
Here are my weaknesses, and here's how I tend to show up in the world.
Okay.
And that is so powerful.
And so, the material talks about self-awareness as being the foundation of emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And the thing that really drives personal growth.
It does.
So why is that?
Well, because it's about bringing this sense of clarity and intention to everything that you do.
Okay, so it's like I'm not just bumbling along. I actually am
You're the captain of the ship.
I am the captain of this ship. I am steering the direction.
You're not just being tossed around by the waves.
Exactly. And so that leads to clarity because I'm clear on where I'm going.
Yes.
And it leads to intention because I'm doing it on purpose.
Because you're choosing the direction.
I'm choosing to go there.
And self-awareness is also like having an internal early warning system, right?
What do you mean by that?
It's like you can see the storm brewing on the horizon
Oh,
before it actually hits.
okay.
And so you can either, take shelter, batten down the hatches,
Right.
or you can be like, okay, I know how to navigate this storm
Okay.
because I've seen it before.
So how does that play out in everyday life?
So
Yeah.
one way is that it helps you manage your emotions better because you start to understand what triggers you.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm not so reactive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you start to understand, oh, this is why this particular thing
Right.
sets me off.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
And it also helps you to communicate more effectively
Okay.
because you're more tuned in to how your words and actions might be perceived by other people.
Okay. So I'm understanding my own triggers.
Yeah.
I'm understanding how I come across to other people.
Totally.
And so what's that third thing that it helps with?
Well, then it helps you to make decisions that are more aligned with your true self,
Okay.
right?
So I'm making choices because they're right for me, not because someone's telling me to do it or
Exactly. Because I think it's
or because you're just reacting impulsively.
the right thing to do.
Yeah, you're not just on autopilot.
Exactly.
You're actually like, okay, here's who I am, here's what I want, and therefore
Yes.
this is the decision I'm going to make.
So I'm less likely to, do something and then be like, why did I do that?
Right, because you're more connected to your motivations.
I understand the motivations.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're looking inward with self-reflection and we're gaining this deeper understanding of ourselves with self-awareness.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to have both?
Because that's where the magic happens.
Okay. Tell me more.
So without self-reflection, the material really argues that you're just kind of living on autopilot.
Okay.
You're reacting to situations. You're not really understanding
Right.
why you're reacting the way you are.
So I could just be repeating the same.
Totally.
Chase.
Same relationship patterns, same career choices. Right. Or I could just be in a routine because it's comfortable.
Because you've never stopped to ask, is this actually serving me
Yeah.
or not?
It's just what I do.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what happens if I'm not doing that self-reflection piece?
Well, you might end up, blaming other people for your circumstances.
Right.
You might be like, oh, it's the job's fault or it's my partner's fault.
It's the world.
Yes, the world's fault.
It's everyone else.
And you don't actually stop to consider your role
Right.
in the dynamic.
And that can be so disempowering.
It is. It's completely disempowering.
Right. Because I have no control.
Yeah, because you're giving away all your power.
I'm just this victim of my circumstances.
Exactly. And so the material says that, if you're not doing that self-reflection piece,
Yeah.
you could end up with unresolved conflicts.
Okay.
You could be making poor decisions.
Okay.
You could just generally feel dissatisfied and lost.
Okay. So that's the
Yeah.
kind of the
But
warning
warning, yes.
of what not to do.
Exactly. Yes.
But then there's the flip side of that,
There is.
which is
Yeah.
what happens when we do.
When you actually engage in self-reflection,
Engage in the self-reflection.
it cultivates emotional intelligence.
Okay.
It strengthens your relationships because you understand people better.
Okay.
And it really equips you to navigate those inevitable challenges in life.
Okay, so it gives you that sense of agency
Yes,
to deal with whatever comes your way.
it does.
Okay, so we've talked about self-reflection,
Yes.
why it's so important.
Yes.
Now let's talk about self-awareness and how that fits into all of this.
So self-awareness, according to this material, acts as this crucial bridge between your intentions and your actual behavior.
Okay, so I might intend to be a good person,
Yeah.
but if I don't have the self-awareness, I might not
You might not
realize that I'm behaving badly.
but you're actually behaving badly.
Right. Or I might intend to be patient, but I
Mhm.
don't actually see what my triggers are.
Exactly.
Right.
You might not recognize
Yeah.
the specific things that cause you to snap.
Interesting.
And then you do things that contradict your values.
Yeah.
Or you have these outbursts that you're like,
All right.
I don't even know where that came from.
Why did I do that?
Yeah.
Or I didn't mean to say that, but I did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that misalignment between who you want to be and how you're actually showing up.
It's that gap.
It is.
Right. Between my good intentions and
And your actions.
my actual actions.
Yeah.
And so what's the good news?
The good news is self-awareness is a skill that you can cultivate.
Okay.
And when you do, it has all these amazing advantages.
Okay. Tell me.
So self-aware individuals tend to be more adaptable to change.
Okay.
They have greater emotional balance,
Okay.
and they often find more success both in their personal and professional lives
Okay.
because they are better at recognizing those triggers.
Okay.
They know how to regulate their responses,
Got it.
and they can actually refine their approach to different situations.
So they're constantly
yeah.
improving and evolving.
It's like taking charge of your personal growth
Right.
instead of feeling like you're just at the mercy of your circumstances.
Yes. I'm not just a victim.
Or your unexamined impulses.
Yes, I am in control.
Yeah.
Okay, so we understand the what and the why of all this.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about how to actually do it.
Let's get practical.
Yeah, how do we actually develop these skills?
Well, the material offers a few really great starting points.
Okay.
So for self-reflection,
Yeah.
they strongly recommend journaling,
Okay.
which can be like, just free-flowing thoughts, getting everything out of your head and onto paper.
Yeah.
Or it can be using prompts to guide you to explore specific experiences or emotions.
Okay, so you know what's coming up for me right now. What am I feeling?
Exactly.
What's going
Or
on?
what happened in that meeting that really triggered me.
Yeah, what can I learn from this
Yeah.
experience?
And the material also suggests incorporating moments of quiet introspection
Okay.
into your day.
So how do I do that?
It could be going for a walk.
Okay.
It could be the moments before you fall asleep at night.
Okay.
It could even be just taking a few minutes after a meeting to kind of process
Okay.
what happened and how you felt about it.
So really just building in
Yeah.
those pauses
Just a little pauses
to reflect.
to reflect, yeah.
Okay. And then what about self-awareness?
So for self-awareness, there's a few key techniques
Okay.
that the material emphasizes.
Wait a moment.
One is the practice of mindfulness,
Okay.
which is all about paying attention to your thoughts and emotions
Okay.
in the present moment without judgment.
Okay.
And so regularly asking yourself, what am I feeling right now?
Okay.
And why am I reacting this way?
Okay.
Can give you such incredible insight.
Okay, so it's that noticing.
Noticing.
What's happening.
What's happening inside of you. Yeah,
as it's happening.
exactly. And then another powerful one is seeking honest feedback
Ooh.
from people that you trust.
That could be scary.
It can be,
Also
but it's so valuable.
really valuable.
Yeah, because often people can see things in us that we're blind to.
That we can't see ourselves.
Yeah, our blind
Oh,
spots.
okay,
Right.
okay.
And they can point those out to us in a loving way.
Okay, so, we talked about journaling for self-reflection.
Yeah,
Does that play into self-awareness at all?
totally.
Okay.
So writing down, your thoughts, your reactions to events, noticing any recurring patterns
Yeah?
that come up can be so helpful
Okay.
for bringing unconscious tendencies into conscious awareness.
So I start to see
You see the patterns.
Those patterns.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Paying attention to your triggers.
My triggers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those specific things that set you off right.
Oh, those buttons that people know how to push.
Exactly.
I
So it
did.
could be certain situations, certain words, certain types of interactions
Yeah.
that evoke those strong negative emotions.
Oh, the things that make me defensive or anxious or just like,
Yeah.
can't even,
Yeah, you just lose it.
I just lose it.
Yeah, and those triggers are like these little signposts. They're like, hey,
Yeah.
there's something here that needs to be looked at.
Okay, so pay attention to my triggers.
Yes.
And then what was that last one?
Observing your own behavioral patterns.
Okay.
So what kind of habits do you fall into?
Oh.
What kind of dynamics do you tend to create in your relationships
Okay.
or in certain situations?
Got it.
When are you at your best and when are you at your worst?
Okay, so it's kind of looking at
Yeah.
the big picture
Looking at the big picture of your behavior.
of how I show up in the world.
Exactly. And that can give you so many clues about
Yeah.
where you can grow.
Okay, so one of the techniques that I found super interesting was the 5 whys.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that works?
Okay, so the 5 whys is this super simple but powerful technique for getting to the root cause of a problem. And that problem can be anything from, why is the car making this weird noise
Okay.
to why am I feeling so unfulfilled in my life?
Okay, so big or small?
Big or small.
Okay.
And the process is basically you just keep asking why.
Okay.
So, it's like, why is this happening?
Okay, and then I answer.
And then you say, why is that?
Oh, okay.
And you keep going, usually about 5 times.
5.
Yeah. And each answer takes you a little bit deeper.
Deeper and deeper to the root.
Exactly like you're peeling back the layers of an onion
Okay.
to get to the core.
I love that analogy.
Right.
I do.
So the material gives this great example of someone who is feeling unmotivated at work.
Okay, it's a classic problem.
It is.
Yeah.
And so they're like, why do I feel so unmotivated?
Yeah.
And the first answer might be because I don't enjoy my tasks.
Okay.
And then you go, well, why don't you enjoy your tasks?
Okay.
Well, because they feel repetitive and unchallenging.
Okay.
And then why is that?
Yeah.
Well, because I feel like I'm not growing or learning anything new.
Okay.
And you keep going. And maybe the fourth why is because I'm afraid to take on new challenges in case I fail.
Ah.
And then the fifth why might be because I'm afraid of not being good enough.
Oh, wow.
So you've gone from I'm unmotivated at work
Right.
to I have this deep-seated fear
A failure.
of failure of not being good enough.
Wow.
And that's a completely different problem to solve.
It is.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting because you start at one place
Yeah.
and you end up in this completely
I think
different.
that some are totally different.
Understand.
Like, yeah.
So what's the benefit of this?
It cuts through those surface level explanations and it forces you to confront
The deeper.
the deeper, often hidden drivers of
Okay.
your feelings and your behaviors.
So I'm getting that real.
We're getting real honest.
the honest look. Yeah.
At what's really going on.
Exactly. And that leads to more self-awareness
Okay.
and more effective solutions. So I can actually address the root of the problem.
Exactly. Instead of just treating the symptoms,
Right. I'm not just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Totally.
I'm going deep down to
you're getting to the source.
the source of the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have these tools.
Yes.
We understand the why.
Yeah.
But as we both know, self-discovery is not always easy.
No, it's not a linear path.
Right.
It's not a straight line.
It's messy.
It's messy.
Yeah.
It's bumpy.
There are ups and downs.
There are ups and downs.
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that people might face
Yeah.
when they're trying to do this work?
So one of the biggest obstacles to self-reflection
Yeah.
is just discomfort.
Yeah.
It can be uncomfortable
It can be really
to
uncomfortable
look inward
because we don't want to see
because we might not like what we see.
those things about ourselves.
Yeah, we might see those unhealthy patterns or past mistakes that we haven't really processed or fears that we've been avoiding. We don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, we just want to keep it all stuffed down.
But we know we have to at some point.
And the way to overcome that resistance
Okay, so how do we deal with that discomfort?
is self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember that this isn't about beating yourself up.
Okay.
This is about learning and evolving.
Yeah.
Like,
So be kind to yourself.
be kind to yourself.
It's a process.
Yeah, because the more compassionate you are with yourself,
Yeah.
the more likely you are to actually be honest with yourself.
That's such a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you're constantly judging yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to shut down.
You
You're
are.
going to be like, I don't want to look at that.
It's too painful.
It's too painful.
Yeah.
Okay. So self-compassion. What's another challenge that people might encounter?
Lack of time.
Oh, yeah.
You know, everybody's busy.
Everybody's so busy.
Yeah, and it's so easy to let self-reflection fall to the bottom of the to-do list.
So the material really emphasizes being intentional about it.
Okay.
Schedule it into your day. Set reminders.
Okay.
Keep a journal by your bed.
So it's right there.
So it's right there, yeah.
When I
When you're ready.
go to bed.
Yeah, or even just use those little pockets of downtime
Okay.
that you have throughout the day.
Like when I'm waiting in line.
Yeah, like when you're commuting or you're waiting in line.
Yeah.
Just to check in with yourself.
Okay.
Just for a few minutes.
So finding those little moments.
Finding those little moments,
You
yeah.
need to build it in.
Yeah.
What about overthinking?
Oh, yes. This is a big one.
Yeah, because we can get in those thought loops.
We can.
Right.
Yeah.
Where we're just constantly
Ruminating.
ruminating and rehashing.
Yeah, and the problem with that
We
is
don't get anywhere.
you don't get anywhere. Yeah.
So how do we deal with overthinking?
So the material suggests shifting your focus from what went wrong to what can I learn from this.
Okay. So it's more about learning and growing?
It's about growth.
Yeah.
Not about beating myself up
Exactly.
for what went wrong.
And if you find yourself spiraling,
Yeah.
just gently redirect your attention.
Okay, so those are some of the challenges with self-reflection.
Yes.
What about self-awareness?
So with self-awareness,
Yeah.
the source points to ego and defensiveness as major roadblocks.
Okay, because it's hard to admit when we're wrong.
It is. It's hard to acknowledge our flaws,
Yeah.
our mistakes.
Right? It can be really embarrassing,
It can.
or we can feel ashamed.
We can. And so our ego wants to protect us from that,
Right.
right?
It's a defense mechanism.
But the problem is that if we're not willing to be honest with ourselves about those things,
Yeah.
we can't actually grow.
We can't learn and evolve.
We can't.
So how do we overcome that?
So the antidote here is to cultivate a growth mindset.
A growth mindset.
Yeah, which means seeing self-awareness not as criticism,
Okay.
but as this incredible tool for improvement.
Okay, so it's not that I'm a bad person.
It's that
It's that you're a work in progress.
I'm a work in progress, and these are the things I can work on.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what about self-deception?
Oh, that's another sneaky one.
What do you mean by that?
So we can be so good at rationalizing our behavior
Oh, yeah.
or convincing ourselves that we're being totally objective when actually our emotions are running the show.
Oh, I'm just being logical.
Yeah, totally logical.
But I'm actually...
But really, you're just I'm super
self-reacting emotion.
emotional about this.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we...
So to overcome that,
Yeah.
we have to practice radical honesty with ourselves.
Radical honesty.
Yeah.
I
Which
don't-
means rigorously questioning our own biases
Okay.
and assumptions.
So really double checking.
Yeah.
Is this really true or am I just telling myself a story? Expert speaker.